Okay, that puts some things in perspective too. Not necessarily that I was questioning why people were like, ooh, Nynaeve, hello, let's be friends, don't forget me. That puts
Yeah,
that into perspective because eventually she is going to be at the top of the food chain.
right. That's like that one scene where Nynaeve is looking for Liandrin and the one young warder is like, "You're Nynaeve
Can I be
Almira."
your warder?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, man.
Exactly.
I did like his approach and his swagger.
Yeah. He shot his shot.
Yeah, he would have had a much better shot with me because I would have been like, I appreciate this. I like your style.
Flattery will get you
It'll get you
everywhere.
everywhere. Plus, I like the fact that you just came right out and asked. Like, you, I love
Hmm.
that.
If you're enjoying this rewatch podcast, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Hello and welcome back. I'm Amber here with Laura, and we are on our episode 7 rewatch of the Wheel of Time podcast. Laura, this was a pretty difficult one, and I remember when we recorded it as the episode came out, I had a hard time with the recap the first time too because so much is
That's the
happening.
thing. Like, there is so much happening in this episode. It's, when you're watching it, at some point, you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot. I was totally watching the second to last episode. And we've got places we need to get.
Yeah,
I think this one was one of the ones that I enjoy the most because,
there's a lot
yeah, because there's so
happening.
much happening. Like the scene where Rand cuts the tie on Moiraine and then it really just pops off from there. Like
Yeah,
we're going full charge from that moment.
yeah. Did you have a scene that you enjoyed the most?
Ooh, I actually really enjoy the Lanfear v Moiraine and Suan scene because I mean you can't really say it's v Rand or Lan because they were taken out in the first few seconds. But that scene is really powerful, especially when we're watching like basically a part of the relationship between Moiraine and Suan die.
Yeah, it kind of begins with them and ends with
Right.
them, which was a pretty strong choice for the episode.
I think it was a good choice, though. We see in the beginning how dedicated Lan is. He basically takes the stance like, fine, Moraine, if you don't want help, that's not really your choice. I'm going to give it anyway.
I'm so glad. Like, it was so needed. Finally, Lan just taking charge.
Especially since, like, Swan makes a really good point to Moraine in the beginning, like when they meet at, what is it, the Sun Palace? So they meet at the Sun Palace, and she tells Moraine, she's like, you've been carrying this burden by yourself for so long. And she was like, from now on, I'm going to row next to you. And you can see the look on Moraine's face where she's like, yeah, I don't like that.
I will not relinquish any of
Yeah,
this. I get it though. I think there's something very relatable about knowing or at least feeling that you're the one who can get the job done and then someone kind of throwing it in your face like, "No, you failed. You failed at what you were supposed to do," which is subjective,
it is.
but
But Swan kind of has a point where she's like, you've been with him for 6 months, and he is no further along today than the day that you found him in channeling. What have you been doing? And granted, it's not like Moraine has been just fucking off, but she's been doing other stuff. And then the whole keeping it her secret about being stilled from Swan. Moraine's having to face all of these things all at one time.
this is definitely one of those situations where, personally, I believe if she would have kept Swan informed,
It would have gone better.
we had talked about, yeah, we had talked about this earlier how Moraine facing everything alone hasn't worked out for her. Now, this is the episode where we were talking about she's finally found this coalition of people who are going to help her, whether it be Alana or Varen or even her sister has come around. And I guess this situation is a little bit different, but when Lady Anvaere hears what Barthanes has agreed to do, which is kill Moraine, she has that last word with him, and she says, Moraine, it's hard to do what's right, but sometimes, Moraine puts what is right first, and like expressing how like that trait of her sister is really admirable. Despite all of it, this is the episode where Moraine has kind of found her new coalition, and Also, she exits the episode with Lanfear, which is just wild because now she's kind of grouped with a Forsaken, which, as a book reader, I had a really hard time getting past that, especially when I first watched the episode. And not so much that I didn't like it, but it was just so strikingly different than something that I could ever imagine Moiraine
Right.
doing. But in the context of the TV show, I think it fits because at this point, Moiraine is like, okay, new plan, regroup. Moiraine definitely believes that Rand is not safe at the White Tower, that whatever Suan is planning just isn't the right choice because there are members within the Aes Sedai community who are not going to be okay with Rand being there.
Yeah, and not only that, but Sawan was like, "Do you know what we're supposed to do with you? Put you in a cage." I really enjoyed Sawan and Rand's exchange because he really came in there feeling like a badass. Like Lanfear has his confidence up, but he
Yes.
doesn't realize that that's all a manipulation from Lanfear. So he's really buying into it. And Lan kind of gets his confidence up, and then he rolls in, and Swan's like, "Yeah, okay, boy." And she makes like some really good points to him, like, "What do you really think you're gonna do? A single Aes Sedai could handle you. You're getting bodied, my guy." And he's like sitting there
Yeah.
on the ground, and you can see like he's just like, "Oh man, what is going on?" Yeah, it was. Oh, there's so much that happens in this episode.
You're out of your element, Rand. You are out of your
And
element.
honestly, I don't know if he realized that until that moment, because nobody's really manhandled him yet. Even the Forsakens that are like chasing him around, tormenting him, they're not necessarily manhandling him. And
No.
Sawan's like the first person to really come in and give him like a ham fisted life lesson.
Yeah, there was something that Lan said that really struck me as profound when it comes to how Rand is perceiving this whole story, I guess, his prophecies
Yeah.
and destinies. Rand says when he's talking to Lan, I left to protect the people I love, inferring,
Yeah.
I'm a male channeler. I've got to get away from the people I care about because I'm destined to hurt them. And Lan says, don't be so selfish. You were born to protect the entire world, every person in it, not just the ones you love. And so it's this really small scale thinking of Rand, where on one hand, it's admirable that he cares about his friends and family so much that he wants to leave to protect them, but he really hasn't got a clue about like how big this whole situation is. He's thinking in terms of like the very small like micro level, and Lan is like, open your eyes, boy. It's not about you, it's about the entire world. And Swan later manhandling him as well kind of just reinforces that.
Rough couple hours for Rand. But I think Lan made a really good point there. Like, Rand is viewing this at such a micro level,
Hmm.
and he needs to be viewing it at like the macro level.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point moving in to season 3 because at this point, he's the Dragon Reborn. He's fulfilled this prophecy in Falme. Once his eyes are open to the weight of all of this and how many people this situation encompasses and all of it, he's going to have to shift his perspective. And if he can't, it's going to be a rough season
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Rand.
it's gonna be. I mean, because we all know what happens in the next episode. If he can't shift that perspective, yeah, season 3 is gonna be a rough go for old Rand.
Yep.
I'm hoping, honestly, I'm hoping that season 3 we kind of see Rand like come into his own in his role.
If we go by the books, he
Okay,
should.
that'd be
It just
cool.
depends. I think it just depends on how they decide to write whatever is standing in his way. Because, in television, you usually have to have some antagonistic
Right.
force,
And we
right?
are working with 8 episodes, and we gotta like it's gotta be cohesive for people to watch.
I'm assuming it's going to be Lanfear part
I also
2.
wouldn't be mad if we just jumped ahead to like Rand's crash out era. That would be a fun little arc. But I realize that, we probably need more story building before that happens.
There's a lot that needs to be covered next season in terms of prophecy, I want to
I
say, to
do
keep it
look,
spoiler
girl, I
free.
do love a good prophecy. Some of my favorite fantasy shows all have it. I'm not so much a huge fan now, but like I used to be, I really enjoyed the Harry Potter series when it came out. It has a lot to do with prophecy. A Song of Ice and Fire is prophecy. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that I really like. So I'm excited about the prophecy elements of this.
Yeah, Rand should be uncovering some massive truths about himself. I know so many people are really, really excited for that. It's kind of like, in my opinion, Act Two. If you look at Rand's entire story, it's kind of like the beginning of Act Two
Yeah.
for his three-part story.
Okay. All right. So like this would have been Act 1 for seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah, like him proclaiming himself Dragon Reborn, and now part two would be, oh shit, I am the Dragon Reborn. What's next? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for my journey?
I feel like Rand's the kind of person like where I'm not surprised that he was like, yeah, I'm not really trying to do what you guys want. Because it feels like he's the kind of person who's going to need to do this his own way. He's not just going to blindly get on board with the White Tower. He comes from an area where they seem to have a little bit of inherent distrust for that.
Yeah,
And I get it. He's like in a really like remote rural area, but I'm really interested to see in how he handles like integrating the Dragon Reborn into who he is now that he's been announced in Fire over Falme. I know that's jumping ahead. Okay, actually maybe I shouldn't talk about this because I feel like I'm going to end up just talking about the next episode. And that's not the point.
let's move on to some of these other plot points then. Is there another location or maybe character that you're interested in with this episode?
If I'm being honest, in this episode, Moiraine and Lan. I love them so much as a duo, and so it's hard for me not to focus on how their story is progressing and finally like moving into that next phase where they reconcile and things start, the gang's back together. But
Yeah.
I really enjoy the slow burn of Perrin's story because I know it means that we're going to get something good from Perrin next season.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm glad we're
Yeah.
checking in on Perrin. I know that there's not a lot of story for him at this moment, and that's okay. I really want to see the wolf sense develop next season. I want to see how Perrin comes into his own because I feel like that's something we're going to see next season too. But I've really enjoyed watching him travel with Aviendha. I know that from what I understand, it's not really a book thing, right? But I
Right.
think the way that it's presented in the show as a show watcher makes it really easy to comprehend what's happening, especially in like a fantasy situation where understanding the world is really important.
Next season, if it goes by the books, he should be spending a lot more time with Bain and Chiad, these two Aiel women that are introduced this episode.
Okay. And then Avienda goes off on a different course, right? Which
Yeah,
that's kind of makes me sad because I like their dynamic, but I think at the same time, like she has bigger things in store.
definitely. This was just the tip of the iceberg with Avienda.
Yeah, I really have enjoyed the like beginning to unravel the Aiel because in season 1 they were more of a mythos than anything. We get the scene where we see Rand's mother on the battlefield giving birth, but aside from that, everything we know about the Aiel in season 1 comes from like secondhand gossiping slash myth.
Yeah. How did you feel about the fight? I guess the one sided fight, Avienda allowing herself to get beaten.
When you live in a desert wasteland, it's not a surprise that your cultural norms would seem harsh compared to those who live in areas that have access to plentiful resources. So I think it really fits the environment that they're born in. It's a harsh, hard environment, and them having a harsher cultural standard for how they handle things, I think really fits.
How do you think that would come into play if next season we should be spending more time in the Aiel Waste and we will have characters who are not Aiel accompanying others on a journey to this landscape. Do you foresee some issues there?
Well, I definitely foresee some shock. And there could obviously be issues, especially if you have somebody who's like believing that they know better than the Aiel or trying to chide them for their practices without fully understanding where their practices come from. Because, like you had described to me, that even how they work with their channelers is completely different. They really don't seem to do anything from the outside world, basically.
They're very different.
I like it. I find it really interesting. If like everything were all the same culture, it would get boring.
Yeah, I think that's one of the highlights of the entire series because every time you're presented with a new culture, you have to kind of sit there with the characters for a while to understand the perspective of this new people. And I should be correct here, but it'll be a lot of time in the Isle Waste, a lot of time in Tanchico, which
Ooh,
that'll be a little bit
new
different.
location.
Yeah. And we should meet the Athaan Mier, the sea folk, which
Ooh,
is,
okay.
they have a very different culture as well. Probably not as extreme as the Aiel, but probably one of the most extreme out of all of the other
Okay.
cultures. They like a good barter.
Where are they from?
They live on the sea. They all live on boats and
Okay, so
ships.
like south of everybody else, from what I remember looking at a map.
They live aboard their ships, they give birth on their ships, they are brought up, raised, the sea is their life. They are kind of like they're not pirates per se, they are traders, but
Like the Greyjoys? Like the Ironborn kind of thing. How the Ironborn are completely dependent on the sea.
yeah, that's
Okay.
basically their setting, I guess. They don't really make home on land at all. So that will be interesting, and they have their own prophecies as well.
Ooh. Okay. I think it would be great if the prophecies did not line up, but then somehow converged in the same point.
So I guess every culture's prophecies that relate to the Dragon Reborn are typically in relationship to what the Dragon Reborn means for their culture and like their story going forward, I want to say. So like
You know what, I realized that I don't think I'm familiar with, and maybe I just missed it in all the times I've watched the show, but how do the Seanchan view the Dragon Reborn? Because all I know is that they believe they're fighting for the light, like that they're going to unite the entire world under the Seanchan to fight for the light. But like, how do they view the Dragon Reborn in all of this?
I want to say it's called the Essenic cycle.
Okay.
It is unknown how similar or different these set of prophecies are. Some believe the set to be highly corrupted for purpose of propaganda.
That's reasonable.
As a key tenet is that the Dragon Reborn must kneel before the Crystal Throne before Tarman Gaiden.
What is it with all of these places and being like, yeah, I know that you're supposed to be the big boss here, but you're going to be under my rule. The White Tower wants to put him in a cage. The Seanchan want him to kneel before the Crystal Throne. Like, this weird
Mm-hmm.
obsession with dominating the Dragon Reborn seems,
Feels very
yeah, it feels
counterintuitive, right?
really counterintuitive. Like, why are you guys trying to piss the Dragon Reborn off, like, from the jump?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about Rand talking to Siuan Sanche, and he's like, "Are you gonna still me?" And she's like, "God, no, boy. How the hell are you supposed to fight in the last battle if you can't channel, idiot?"
I mean, she had a really good point there. When he said that, it was like, no, her point stands, Rand. You let your paranoia get ahead of you from thinking.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change that she like made it clear that the White Tower's like guidelines here is to subjugate him. And now that, like I said, the Seanchan want to do the same thing. Ooh, maybe I wonder if anybody else's viewpoints include subjugation of the Dragon Reborn. Luce Theron really messed it up.
Most hated man in the
I mean,
universe.
like that. I know that that was like a hard turn, but like that's just what came through. I was like, man, Luce Theron made everybody paranoid.
In the books, almost every Forsaken, for the most part, their backstory is like hated Luz Theron, turned to the shadow. Like, that's it.
The man who is so hated, he created a legion of dark forces.
Pretty much. It was like hated or was jealous of.
Or in Lanfear's case, unhealthily obsessed.
Yeah. Going back to the Seanchan, that one line from Rhaena, Egwene, sul'dam, she did talk a little bit about the Empress of Seanchan this episode and how, like, she is committed in fighting in the last battle by uniting everyone together.
Right.
And she's like, this is why you're a sul'dam, Egwene. This is your purpose.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in a cult can always find a way to make it work for the cult's, like, practices.
Yeah, in this episode, here's the thing. I think with Egwene, one of the things that hurt and was so hard for me to watch this episode is when they have that little channeling display with all of the sul'dam.
The power test?
Yeah. Egwene is so strong in the one power. And there is a moment in this episode that almost makes you question if Egwene is kind of getting into that Stockholm Syndrome mindset, because she has this great, like, grand display of the one power, and everyone's just like, wow, Egwene, like, wow, like, she's really strong. You can feel it in the air almost. It's sickening, but in that moment, Egwene is feeling the recognition that she never got at the White Tower, with everyone kind of being like, oh, Nynaeve, Nynaeve, Nynaeve. And so for that 1 minute, you're just like, oh no, is she, like, enjoying this in a way? But then it cuts to that later scene where Rhaena is giving her, like, a sponge bath. And you almost think that, like, Egwene is going to kind of become even more broken in that moment and kind of fall into this trap. But no, Egwene's only line of dialogue this episode is, Rhaena, I will kill you. Which is like, okay, whew,
right?
Okay, we're good.
I can see how during her power test, she could have some really conflicting emotions happening, because she's getting the recognition she never got at the White Tower, but also she might have even surprised herself during that test. I'm not sure that she was actually aware of how powerful she is until that moment. You know, the look on her face when she looks at Rhaena after the blast goes out?
Yeah.
It almost looks like a form of horrific appreciation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way I can describe it, like horrified appreciation. You know, her situation is horrifying, but at some level, Rhaena has showed her that she is powerful and all of her hard work is going to pay off. She just doesn't want it to be under Rhaena, which, I mean, feels.
Right. Was there anything else with the Seanchan that we wanted to cover before we go into a different topic?
It's Seanchan adjacent, but it would be a different topic.
Tell me.
So one of my favorite scenes is kind of like a small scene, actually. And it's Nynaeve and Elayne, and they've got their little, like, all right. They're like, okay, we know what to do. We've got the collar. We've got the wristband. We're going to do it. And they're sitting, like, back there just kind of waiting. And she's like, okay, she's coming. And then Nynaeve's just like, I hope it hurts. And I was like, it's such a small moment, but I really enjoyed this dynamic that's growing between them.
I love them together so much.
I actually really,
so much.
really enjoy Nynaeve's annoyance with Elayne, where she tells Loial, like, get up, you're going to, like, stop.
Don't encourage her.
Like, I love it. And, like, even when Elaine's like, we tried this your way, it didn't work, and now we're doing it mine. And I love how they built this plan that they're going to sneak in by collaring an actual sul'dam.
Yeah. Not only do I love Nynaeve, just like, she's like, oh, hey, look at this.
That was so good. She goes, hey, look at this. Doesn't this look good?
And then as soon as the woman is collared, Elayne just, like,
hits her right in the face. Like, plants that, like, hard piece of wood right into, like, the front of her face. And all I could think in that moment was, I mean, well, I bet that hurt.
They're so good together. I think it's moments like that where there is some levity to it that I'm so appreciative of, especially after last episode where it's just like the doom and gloom of it all, where it's like, okay, well, that was a nice like little reprieve from all of that. But I love the dynamic of these two women together.
Yeah, I really enjoyed their dynamic. Nynaeve is so likable. I know that she's like kind of explosive at times, but she's so genuine and authentic all the time that you can't help but appreciate that. And Elayne is so reserved and diplomatic that it creates this like odd couple pairing that's really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. She's so interesting in terms of like how they both kind of feed on each other's status, I would say. Nynaeve, she's nowhere near a queen, but in her little village in the Two Rivers, Nynaeve had one of the highest positions possible, and that's what made her so, I guess, in her own feels all the time, is because people didn't really respect her for what she did. So to have these two women who both truly believe, like, I am fully capable, and for them to work together, they can really do anything when they're not bickering. Like, this
Yeah.
little plan of theirs, chef's kiss.
You know what else I just thought about when you were talking about like Nynaeve's position in the Two Rivers is that Nynaeve actually has a pretty elevated position within the White Tower too. Not that like she's sitting in a high authority position right now, but everybody knows her. Everybody's like, "Ooh, you're going to be a big deal." So she already has like clout there. And it's in a different way than Elayne has clout. Elayne has clout from being like the daughter heir of Andor, but Nynaeve has clout for being a beast. Like a
Yeah,
beast of a channeler. And I could see how in the White Tower, like Nynaeve's clout will actually go a little further than the type of like clout that Elayne has.
that's 100% the case because in the White Tower, unless you are the Amerlin or maybe one of the sitters of the Aja, everyone has to defer to the person with more potential, like raw power and
Oh,
channeling.
okay. I didn't realize that. That's good to know.
So as long as you are an Aes Sedai, not an accepted or novice, but you've got the ring. If you're the most powerful, everyone pretty much has to defer to you in certain situations. If you're thirsty and you want some tea, you can pretty much tell anybody, "Hey, go do
Okay.
this for me."
So yeah,
That's kind of a weird, I don't know, not so much tea, but in
I get
terms
what
of
you're
like
saying.
making decisions and stuff like that, like you're on top. You're top
You're
dog.
boss man.
Yeah, boss Mang.
Okay, that puts some things in perspective too. Not necessarily that I was questioning why people were like, "Ooh, ah, Nynaeve, hello, let's be friends. Don't forget me." That puts
Yeah,
that into perspective because eventually she is gonna be at the top of the food chain.
right. That's like that one scene where Nynaeve is looking for Liandrin and the one young warder is like, "You're Nynaeve
Can I be
Almira."
your warder?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, man.
Exactly.
I did like his approach and his swagger.
Yeah. He shot his shot.
Yeah, he would have had a much better shot with me because I would have been like, I appreciate this. I like your style.
Flattery will get you
It'll get you
everywhere.
everywhere. Plus, I like the fact that you just came right out and asked. Like, you, I love
Hmm.
that. Okay, yeah, that puts a lot into perspective for me.
I wanted to ask you about one scene in particular, and it is when Siuan Sanche shows up in Cairhien, and you have kind of like all of the Aes Sedai just out and about chatting. We get a scene with Alana and her warders, and there's this conversation like, hey, I don't trust Varen. And Alana's like, yeah, don't worry about following Varen or her warder, whoever. I want us together in the city. Like, I don't want us separated if there's a Forsaken on the loose. So they have a vote. And Yvonne is like on a mission and he just leaves. So we get that scene. We have Varen, who's who is it? Yasika slips her an Ogier map to the city to find the Waygate. So that's how Moiraine finds the Waygate out of the city. So we've got this kind of internal Aes Sedai thing where it's like nobody trusts each other. I think Maxim is even like, I want to know where Liandrin went, you know? So you've got like three
I mean, I
different
got to give the man
people,
credit. He knows how to spot a suspect person of interest.
right? What do you think that this means that Alana and her warders don't trust Varen? Is it just like a situation of location where Varen's been away for so long that they're kind of like, what's she doing here?
It's really easy for me to believe that most Aes Sedai would be inherently suspect of other Aes Sedai. There's always a chance that
Okay.
you're dealing with a Black Aja. And I think everybody knows that. And I mean, like, Leandrin draws a lot of just cause to suspect her. But as far as Varen goes, regardless of what Varen's doing, showing up out of nowhere and inserting yourself so deeply in the situation does look suspect.
That's true.
I don't blame Yvonne and Maxim or even Alana for being like a little suspect, but I think a lot of it is brought on by like how Varen was, often basically Greece with her olive trees. And then suddenly she shows back up and she's like in the mix. Not just like, oh wow, what's going on? But like she shows up and immediately starts moving behind the scenes.
Yeah, and then on that aspect, she did kind of prove herself to Moraine this episode.
She did.
She sneaks in, gets Leanne, who was shielding Rand, to leave her station, which excellent use of not lying but lying.
It was. It really was.
Moraine was even like, wow, girl, real respects real.
Yeah, but at the same time, I could see like that in itself turning into suspicion towards Varen from Moraine. Because now, like, Moraine knows you are that talented with recomposing a sentence in order for it to be enough truth to pass into like the green zone of what you need to do.
Yeah, she didn't lie. She said to Leanne, you're needed to help protect the city, which is true. And she says, what did she say? I can't remember her words, but like, I've been sent to do something. And I mean, really, like, she could have just been sent by Moraine. So
Yeah,
that's
it was a
it.
really creative use of half truths. It was so vague that it's not really a lie, but like if any scrutiny is applied to it, it's 100% a lie.
Right. I do think, though, that this episode leaves some questions about who can and can't be trusted.
Absolutely. This is kind of off topic, but kind of like something I question, which is personally, I think Siuan Sanche made a mistake being like, we're going to present Rand with 14 Aes Sedai to show that we have control of him. If you need 14 Aes Sedai to control this man, I don't think anyone's going to believe that you ultimately have control.
Well, if they would have explained this more, it probably would have,
Made more sense.
yeah,
Okay.
it takes 13 channelers to still another channeler. So that was a part of Lan's whole discussion about Moraine not being still because he's like, even a Forsaken couldn't do it alone. 13 is the magic number. So with Swan saying, like, we have all of these women here, we're going to present him with 14. She's probably meaning herself
And
and
13.
13 Aes Sedai, which would be like the showing of like if he acts out, we have the power to still
I don't
him.
know.
If,
Yeah.
he turns to the dark or something.
I think for me, it seems like better PR for the whole situation to not have the 13 Aes Sedai like up on, a really visible platform because then to me, it would make it look like the Dragon Reborn wants to help. He wants to
Oh,
follow
yeah.
the side of the light versus like this whole like if he steps out of line, we're going to get him kind of thing. Cause that to me makes it seem like shaky ground.
I think she's doing it for PR within the Aes Sedai community because her bringing in their Dragon Reborn is not going to be met with the explicit okay by every Aja or every Aes Sedai. So to get them on board, she needs to make them feel like they're in control of the situation. This is actually like a huge problem for her, a huge problem, because if it comes out that she knew that Rand was the Dragon Reborn and didn't bring him back to the tower, this puts her in a position of losing all authority between, the sitters, the Ajas. She's screwed. And especially with Moiraine going through the Waygate with Lanfear, if anyone else saw that, they would think that Moiraine is in cahoots with the
Right.
Forsaken. Next season, Siuan Sanche should be screwed. If it gets out that she had the Dragon Reborn right there and she knew about it and she let him get away, she is screwed.
Interesting.
Because of this tower law, he's supposed to be brought to the tower. If they find out that she's been in cahoots with Moiraine for this whole time, she's broken tower law.
Okay. Even though, like, I don't see how imprisonment and enslavement is going to make anybody want to help you, but I do see what you're saying there.
Yeah, and it's not so much that it's just like, oh, she broke the rules. The bigger problem is that there are people within the White Tower who are already like, look at Liandrin. She's pretty much said to Leanne that one episode, when the Amerlin falls, you're gonna fall with her. And in season 1, we heard of Leandrin having her little cabal. Or was that in this season? It doesn't matter. But there are already factions inside the White Tower that don't want Siuan Sanche in charge.
Right. But wouldn't that be the case with like every Amerlin? Aren't there always going to be factions that don't want you in charge?
Right. But now they have the means to act on
Right.
it with everything that's happening with Rand. So when she's distracted, all of these issues with the Black Aja, with, even something as simple as people casting doubt on someone like Varen, who was gone for a while and shows up, like, there's going to be so many people, so many Aes Sedai pointing fingers at other people that you're looking at like a massive fallout
Mm.
in the White Tower if this gets out.
Right, right. Interesting. What an archaic stance for them to take.
It's going to be something that plays out, at least in the books. There are huge repercussions for all of the sprinklings of things that we've seen this season. But I think the main thing just to focus on next season is that the White Tower is going to be a hotbed of just mistrust. Black Aja,
Ah,
Dragon
a
Reborn.
hotbed of insurgent activity.
Exactly.
That'll give it
Exactly.
a lot of spice that I'll enjoy.
Yeah. We got to talk about Matt before we wrap it up.
Yeah. I'd almost forgot. I meant to bring him up earlier and then I'd forgotten about him.
So we see him get knocked out by some random man. I'm assuming it's a man. They had man hands, okay? Any thoughts who that might be? Just random dark friend?
Ooh. I hadn't really thought about that because I assumed that like Ishi and Lanfear have a whole host of minions by this point. Though I do wonder if it's Barthanes.
Oh.
Oh, do I have my timelines mixed up? Is Barthanes arrested by his
Well,
mother before or after the mat scene?
after.
Okay, so yeah, it could still be Barthanes, but that seems like a little like low work for Highborn. There's so many options.
Obviously not someone connected to Liandrin because she doesn't like men.
Yeah.
I doubt that she has somebody out there running around taking orders from her like that.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about who that might be because I just figured it was some like low level thug that works for him. I didn't think that he'd have to like work very hard to send people to do that. But I did enjoy like a lot of how Matt's curiosity made it so that he couldn't not drink the tea. And
Matt Cawthon, you were born
I
mine.
get it. I get it. Like, I would want to not drink the tea, but my curiosity would absolutely get the better of me and I'd drink the tea.
In the book, something similar happens to Matt, but we don't get to see it.
Okay.
We only know that he goes through, it's something similar to a Waygate, but the show didn't probably have enough time to explore it. It's something called a portal stone, and you can kind of jump to different locations with it.
Okay.
But the problem is a lot of the times when you take the jump, within like seconds, your brain is beaten by like every different version of you that's ever existed. Rand goes through and he sees every possible version of himself, like a king, a sheep herder, a soldier, a husband, every version of life that he's ever lived, kind
Okay.
of. And also, we talked about Ingtar last week. That jump through the portal stone, Ingtar sees every version of himself, which is what leads to his sacrifice.
Oh, shit. Is it Ingtar who knocks Matt unconscious?
It could be.
Okay.
It could be.
I can't.
It could
Wait,
be.
did Matt get knocked out?
No, because
Didn't he get knocked out in Cairhien? And
Yeah,
then he was
so it
like
can't be.
brought to Falme unconscious?
yeah, it can't be Ingtar because Ingtar's in
Right.
Falme.
Okay, he's busy. Sorry. Okay, so
I think it has to be someone who's in Cairhien.
yeah.
Which right now, I think we've ruled out Barthanes.
Yeah, I
personally, I don't see Highborn doing low work either.
That doesn't work for me. It's the only name I could come up with.
Is it possible that there are some other Black Aja members from like Liandrin's group?
Running around Cairhien? Absolutely. I would imagine they're everywhere. Why would you have like a secret society and not have them everywhere?
Could be a warder.
Ooh, okay. Ooh, what if it's Tomas? I don't know, because I'm pretty convinced Baron is a Darkfriend.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can't explain why, but there's something off going on there.
Well, Tomas was missing.
Yeah. Ooh, good point.
But also, Yvonne was missing for a while because he was quote unquote spying. So,
Yeah.
or not Tomas. Did I say Tomas or did I say Yvonne?
You said Yvonne.
One of, okay.
Yeah, but they were kind of missing at the same time. That wouldn't work because Yvonne was spying on Tomas.
Wasn't he leaving to go spy on Tomas?
Yeah, so I guess like Tomas would have had a couple free moments to do it, but that just, how would he have moved Matt at that point? It's got to be somebody who could move him.
Well, he wouldn't have moved him.
Oh.
The Forsaken, he just, I think, knocked him out. The Forsaken can show up whenever. Sorry. The Forsaken can travel like with the snap of their fingers for the most part. There's just the stipulation where they have to know where they're going.
I am immediately going to rewatch this episode again, just that part. You know, one thing I will say about this, though, is that, like, I don't think that Ishi's plan here with Matt had the effect he thought it was going to have.
No.
I think it actually kind of backfired. He should have just let Matt to his own devices because his own devices would have interfered. But instead, in the effort of trying to push him further into those, he is inevitably going to push Matt towards being a hero. Like,
Agreed.
what he was trying to stop, Ishi is actually, like, speeding the process of.
If they would have knocked him out and transported him and just dumped him in an alleyway in Falme, it would have worked much better.
Yeah, or even if they had just, I don't know, dumped him anywhere but where Rand was.
Well, that's the thing. They need him in proximity to Rand so that Min's vision can come true of him stabbing Rand.
Yeah, but the visions themselves are so, like, vague. And Min is having prophetic visions. Prophecy is never linear. Nothing about it is linear. So why would her visions be so linear?
Yeah.
Ooh, what if the vision was a plant from the wheel or whoever's in charge at the top in order to push Matt where he needs to go? Like, the vision needs to happen. That way Ishamael interferes, and that's what gives Matt the push in the right direction.
I think that's a really good thought. I will say, though, Min's visions always come true.
Like in a very upfront way.
Not in an upfront way, but if she sees it, it's going to happen. Okay. It might be the interpretation is wrong, but it's going to happen.
Right. Okay.
So even if you would have kept them separated, it wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
But I don't think Ishamael knows that. The viewers don't know that at this point either.
Yeah.
I think the only person that we didn't really touch on was Logain.
Oh yeah. His and Lan's little chat in the garden.
I like how Lan was like, I'll give you the key. And then he's like, psych.
Yeah,
You're going back to the White
that was
Tower.
great. Like, Logain must have forgotten that warders are not bound by the three oaths.
Right?
Also, it was nice to see that side of Lan.
Doing stuff, making stuff happen,
Right.
using his noggin.
Not only worrying about honor.
Right?
It was like also super brilliant of Lan to put all of this together.
I know. I'm so glad that they gave him that. He's so loyal, but he's not loyal out of like brainless worship. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like he truly believes. He forsake his own duty of going back to try and become the leader of his fallen nation out of what he believes is something more important, which is helping Moiraine and finding the Dragon Reborn. He's so on board. He is ride or die, and it's finally like shown, which is nice. I hope next season we get, I want to say like the more like warrior aspect of Lan.
Ooh, that would be a nice facet of his personality to see.
Right? Because so far we've been presented mostly with just his loyalty to Moiraine. And I kind of feel like this episode you're starting to see his intelligence and who he is. But I think we need a little bit more time with him. I'm a Lan fan.
I am too.
I enjoy him.
Oh, absolutely. Same. I find him to be a really enjoyable character, especially now that he's like solving mysteries.
Right? My last thought with this episode is going to the very, very beginning.
Okay.
The cold open of Moiraine and Suan in the White Tower, making all of these plans for the future. Like, maybe you'll be my fishwife. No, maybe you'll be my fishwife. And planning, like, what their lives together will look like, only for those plans to be immediately slashed by Guitar Moroso having this vision that the Dragon Reborn has been reborn. And then it's kind of like dashing all of their hopes.
Oh, yeah, their future changes in an instant.
And I love how that's how we began the episode. And then it ends on Moiraine walking through the Waygate with Lanfear.
While Siuan's laying in the snow, bleeding and crying. So sad.
It's a lot.
It is.
It's a lot.
Also a life lesson. Don't make promises to Lanfear because turns out she's always watching. When she rolled in and was like, I told you I was going to kill her if I ever saw you two together again.
You know what? I didn't really touch on just how great of a scene it is. Lanfear so casually walking through Cairhien.
Her channeling
like she
is off the chain.
She looks bored.
Like, I know I brought this up the first time we recorded, and I loved it this time just as much. We see Moiraine go through the whole thing to open that Waygate and close it, and Lanfear literally pops through the alley, snaps it open, and then just starts, like, taking charge and throwing people around. I know it's a very subtle thing, but it really highlights the power differences between your everyday Aes Sedai or even one who's very powerful like Siuan Sanche and a Forsaken. Like, there's no struggle to do anything with them. They are flippantly channeling in a way that the Aes Sedai have to put their whole selves into it.
Absolutely. Hopefully we get some flashback scenes to the Age of Legends next season, and we get to see some different power levels.
Yeah, I would really enjoy some flashbacks to the Age of Legends because it's like fairly frequently mentioned and referenced, but it's hard to like really conceptualize it because of the bravado of the Age of Legends in itself.
True. Bravado is the perfect word. Oh. So my very last thought is that one of the comments for our most recent rewatch episode on episode 6, someone commented, I wish that this was in video format so I could see my face when you're making
Accurate predictions.
when you're making predictions and they're like, I want to see how good your poker face is.
Well,
And I want to say to this person, my poker face is bad.
I was actually thinking like us doing this in audio format to where I can't see you makes it much easier for you to keep me in the dark.
It does.
But also that my house remodel is finally just about coming to a close and I'll be able to do video again.
Haha. Maybe we'll do a wrap up video.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you've made it this far, once again, thanks for listening. We will be back next week with the next episode. Please like, please subscribe, please comment. That definitely helps the algorithm boost this out. And I know a lot of people are probably looking for recaps and rewatches as season 3 approaches. So if you'd like to help out, you can do it that way. And we will be back next week.